Hi, everyone. My name is Dan Hirsch. I'm the Dean of Campus Life here at Pitzer. This is completing my 5th year at Pitzer, and my job is essentially to make sure that life on campus is engaging and fun and exciting. And specifically, the way I work on that is trying to find ways to and build ways to connect the work that students do inside the classroom with work that folks are doing outside the classroom. So that's my primary focus. I work closely with Alayna, who will be joining us here in a few minutes. And I also teach a little bit in the sociology department here at Pitzer. Do we want to go to Sarah? Do you want to introduce yourself next?
Sure. Okay, so I'm Sarah Gilman. I'm a professor of biology here at Pitzer, and I also direct the first year seminar program, and I can talk about that really quickly. The first year seminar course is a course that's required of all incoming first year students. It fulfills the writing requirement at Pitzer, and it's also a general introduction to academic life. So it's designed to get you ready to read and talk about scholarly texts in an academic environment. The course is also meant to introduce you to the greater academic community. So most of the sections of the course also have things outside activities like field trips or attending a public talk or visiting the art gallery on campus, just to give you some ideas of the titles of courses for this coming fall. I just picked a couple at random. So the topics often are sort of interdisciplinary explorations of big questions. So for example, what is human, video and diversity? Let's see, what else? Virtual you, living with unfreedom. And then your instructor for your first year seminar course is also your academic advisor for your first 2 years until you declare your major. And so that's a change we started doing about 5 or 6 years ago, and it's made a huge difference, I think, in academic advising. I get to know my students, my advisees much better when I'm also their instructor in that first semester, and I see them every week. So that's the first year program.
Thanks, Sarah. And before I hand it off over to Dan and Connie and Alayna do their introductions, for all of our students, you can start writing your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll get started with the panel.
Introduce yourself. Hey there, Connie.
Hi. Okay. Sorry, things are breaking up. I wasn't sure. Okay. I'm Connie Helland. I'm the academic coach. I've been with Pitzer for starting my 9th year. The goal of coaching is to be really proactive in your academics and to make sure you're connecting with all of your resources possible, learning how to manage your time on campus, which is really different from life before college. And students come in as freshmen with really different questions than they might come in with when they're seniors. Seniors are working on their thesis, and suddenly things are really different for them again. But for our freshmen, we really like to connect with as many of them as we can. And word of mouth gets around, and I see just a lot of freshmen every year.
Great. Thanks, Connie. And Alayna, can you introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Alayna Session-Goins. I'm the Assistant Dean of Campus Life, and I have the awesome opportunity of getting to work with all of our new students through the New Student Orientation Program. The New Student Orientation Program is made up of a number of different things. The kind of signature program that we have as a part of New Student Orientation is our Orientation Adventure Trips, which are 4-day off-campus trips throughout Southern California, and we send off some upperclassmen students with each group to just get to know campus culture, hear from students, build some relationships with your new peers. And these trips are really fun. They go anywhere from surfing and backpacking to like LA arts and food and histories of activism. So we have a lot of different options for our new students. Additionally, once you return to campus, we have a 4-day academic orientation. orientation. So one of my responsibilities is working with students to plan all of those programs and make sure that your academic transition is as smooth as possible. One other component of orientation is we do have an academic guide position, which is an upperclassman student position, and they all get to work with our new students on their academic transition and making sure that you know how to register, you know how to look for classes and use all of our online technology. And they'll also kind of stay with you throughout that first semester to help you understand all of our processes and timelines and stuff like that. So in addition to orientation, I also work with students on programming and making sure that we have a vibrant campus culture.
Great. Thanks, everyone. So I see that we have questions coming in. We'll get to those in just a second. Before we do that, I just wanted to name that I know that there are, throughout the course of the day and over the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of questions about what's Pitzer going to do in the fall. And those are very legit and valid questions. And the answer is, we don't know, just like everybody else, right? So we're trying to figure out what's the smartest and safest and most responsible decision to make regarding how we're going to re-engage with students in person in the coming fall semester. It could be that we start as anticipated. It could be that there's a delay. We just don't know at this point. But specifically for the group, I'm bringing this up for two reasons. One is I know that's on everyone's mind, including ours. And secondly, the group that you see this panel today is very involved with things that happen, that get planned over the summer and start right when students get back in August. So those are very complicated, the OA processes, orientation adventure processes, like Alayna was just talking about, those are very complicated and time consuming. So we have to plan and assume that we're going to be starting in August, because if we don't assume that, and that's what ends up happening, it'll be too late and we'll be behind schedule. So the answers to some of your questions that are coming in terms of some of the things we'll get to, we're going to answer from the perspective that we are going to be starting normal, like we would anticipate in the fall. So that I just want to give that caveat and understanding that that doesn't mean a decision has been made or that we know something that everybody else doesn't. It just means that our positions and our responsibilities and the tasks that we have ahead of us require that we move forward as if we're going to start in the fall as normal. So I just wanted to put that out there for everyone so that we understand there's no misunderstanding about where we're coming from on some of these answers. And to that point, so we have our first question that came in, and it's, does Pitzer have good connections for internships and jobs in the LA area? Is there a lot of competition with those and the others from Claremont, USC, and UCLA? Does anyone want to take that question?
I could start, I guess. I don't know if, I'm actually not sure if Brad Thorpe, who's our Career Center head, he might be speaking in another session and could answer this better than me, but in general, the colleges work collaboratively on things like that. So all 5 career centers work together to organize internships and alumni events. And so when you come to a place like Pitzer, you're not only getting the alumni networking and the internship opportunities of one college, but you're getting them across the consortium.
Yes, and to your question, or to your point, yeah, Brad, who's the director of the Career Center, is joining us during the Campus Resource Fair. So he'll be the best person to ask those questions of, but there are many aspects of the consortium that we get to take advantage of, as Sarah's saying, in terms of offering opportunities to students. But I think we'll, unless Connie or Alayna want to add something to that, I think we can defer a lot of those questions to Brad, who's coming up next, and build on what Sarah just said.
Yeah, I see lots of students getting internships that I work with. So I think it's a pretty good set of opportunities. Yeah,
there's a fund for it, and I get to, like you, Connie, I get to hear the stories of some pretty awesome internships that students take. But yeah, there's a process, and there's a fund to help support that, and good connections with our alums and board trustees and other folks here, but also around the country. We've got another question. I think maybe Sarah will direct this one towards you. It's when do most Pitzer students declare their majors and minors?
That's a good question. So you're required to declare by halfway through the first semester of your junior year, and we really encourage most students to declare a little earlier, usually by the end of their sophomore year.
there's kind of a related question here, Sarah. What kind of academic advising and counseling is available for the entirety of their time at Pitzer, like past their first year? How does that work?
Gosh, that's a good question. Okay, so when you come in, you'll be assigned a faculty member who will serve as your FYS instructor and your academic advisor. Usually that person is your advisor for your first 2 years or until you declare. What I usually tell students is you don't really ever have just one advisor, because pretty much every faculty member that you take a class from or interact with is going to be a resource for you. So it's more like building the team than having a single advisor. But most students typically stick with their first year seminar advisor until they declare, and then they move on to an advisor in their major field.
Great, thanks. We have a somewhat similar question. I think this is probably to certainly Sarah and Alayna, and also maybe Connie. When do you plan your freshman year schedule, and will you find your schedule before school starts? So it has both first year seminar implications and orientation implications. So Sarah, do you want to get us started with that?
Yeah, sure. So first year students register for classes essentially a day or two before classes start. So during your orientation, you'll meet your academic advisor for the first time. You'll go through things like placement tests and information sessions to help you figure out what courses you need to be in. And then after you've gotten through all that, you'll have usually a longer one-on-one meeting with your advisor, and they'll help you pick your courses then.
And kind of as a follow-up to that, just from the student perspective, I just finished up interviews with all of our academic guide candidates, and almost all of them said that during their first year, their biggest suggestion to students is to explore and try out new classes, regardless if you're able to get into kind of what your intended major is, if that's what you have a major coming in. All of them have said that the best advice they could give would be to explore and try new things. And so that's going to be part of your exploration process during orientation with your advisor, talking to your academic guide, is seeing what classes are out there and maybe choosing some fun ones to start with.
Awesome, thank you. Connie, maybe we can start with you for this question, then probably, and Sarah, anything else you want to add? We have a student here that's asking, what steps are taken if a student is doing poorly in a class? That never happens.
It happens, not a lot, but it does happen. And most of the time, students can reach out to me, their professors, other support staff to get where they need to be to continue to thrive in their classes. So professors can reach out and send a low grade notice if there's concern. And a low grade notice might not even be that low of a grade. It might be a C. They say, we just feel like you could be doing better. You need to make sure you're coming to class. Let's talk. And academic support services will reach out to that student and say, hey, how can we help? Do you need help managing your time? Are you struggling with the content? Maybe you need to go to one of the tutoring sessions that we provide. And most students respond to us, and they come in and they meet with us, and we get them connected with their advisor, their professors, and let them know what's available. And sometimes freshmen don't understand what the expectations are. That they go, oh, I need to up my writing skills a little bit. Let's get you connected with someone at the writing center. And study groups and things like that.
Thanks, Connie. Sarah, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think I just add that it's sort of normal for most students to hit a bump in the road at some point during their first year, that you do kind of have to up your game from whatever you were doing in high school. And the thing to remember is that there are resources. So, don't be afraid to talk to your professors. Don't be afraid to seek out help from Connie in the Office of Student Affairs. Because we're all here to help you. We're all on your team.
And I think also from the student affairs side that we are trying to also anticipate things that may disrupt a student's ability to be successful in class, right? So if something's happening that's unrelated to classes and it's life back home or something on campus that's going on that could disrupt classes, we'll also get you're in touch with folks proactively as much as possible to try and anticipate that, maybe we need to change some deadlines on papers or whatever it is so we can accommodate, whatever's happening, because life happens. And so we do that. I know I do that for my students if I find out something that is coming up in their lives, but it hasn't necessarily impacted their school yet, just to be thoughtful and aware of that, so that we can build those connections and relationships across all the different departments and the resources that are here for you at Pitzer. Good questions. I like this one too. I'm coming to you on this one, Alayna. The question is, when do I need to start filling out roommate forms and all the other associated forms like that?
Great. Yeah. So we will be reaching out to all students that have committed to Pitzer on May 20th. And on May 20th, you will get access to fill out roommate forms, your orientation adventure trip preferences, your first year seminar preferences, and just a slew of other opportunities for you to give us information. So keep an eye out for that May 20th go date for all of those preferences.
And related to that, Alayna, can you talk a little bit about how roommates are chosen and how that process works?
Yeah. So in your residence hall agreement housing application form, you will be sharing with Pitzer a bunch of information about your preferences around, if you're an early riser or a night owl, the cleanliness of your room that you like to live within, so on and so forth. And also some just things that you're interested in. And then the Residence Life and Housing Office puts a lot of work into looking through all those applications and trying to pair students with folks that we've seen could be successful around, type of study space and where you like to study and stuff like that. So that we're putting people that are a bit more similar in living style together. With that being said, I know a lot of students have maybe never, or incoming students have never maybe lived with someone physically. So there is going to be compromise, and it is going to be a part of your learning experience in colleges, how to share physical space and be hospitable to each other. And so Pitzer will do their best to pair people together, and students can give, if there's two students that know they want to live together, they can put that on their housing application as long as both of them do.
Thanks, Alayna. Yeah, and that the Res Life team takes those surveys pretty seriously, and whatever you put on them pretty literally. So be honest, it's not an aspirational survey. If you're not a clean person, maybe now's not the time to try and force yourself to be a clean person. Just be honest about what your natural habits are, because those are going to be used to pair, like Alayna was talking about. So so that's important. We appreciate the aspiration, but the honesty is helpful. The next question is about contingency plans in case we are not able to open up as we'd like to and move forward as planned in the fall. That's a fair and good question, and looking at what alternative fall schooling could look like. We've transitioned this semester, in the middle of the semester, into online classes, obviously, and that transition, I think, was relatively smooth given the scale on which that happened, and turning things around. For those who don't know, we extended the spring break this year an additional week to give faculty time to accommodate their syllabi, right, to adjust. I know, Sarah and I for sure both had syllabi that were designed on being in the same room as students, so that took a little time to figure that out. The benefit of, so the difference for the fall semester, if we had to do something similar for the fall, either for some short length of time or the entire semester, I think everything's on the table at this point in terms of planning. At least we'll be able to accommodate those in advance, right? Like, we won't be changing the syllabus on the fly. We'll know in advance. It's a lot easier to adjust the syllabus when people come back rather than the other way around. So from the academic side, I think we, higher education, but also Pitzer, will be better able and to handle that transition. I can sort of defer to Sarah on more of that, and Alayna too, because if there's some sort of, let's say we have a delayed start, which is another contingency plan, right? We just moved the start of the semester back a week or two. What does that do to, for example, orientation adventure, or the trips that we do? These are all things that we're going to have to talk about and think through. I don't know if Sarah or Alayna, you have any thoughts on any of the contingencies that we, the college at Pitzer, have been talking about, but anything you'd want to add to that question?
You want to start, Sarah, or do you want me to?
I don't have a lot to add. I mean, I think pretty much all colleges across the country are looking at, you know, multiple contingency plans as once. You know, what if we have to go completely online in the fall? What if we have to start earlier to avoid a winter outbreak? What if we have to, you know, start later because there is a local outbreak? So right now it's all up in the air, and we're just trying to come up with as many possible alternative plans as we can. Alayna, I don't know if you want to talk specifically about orientation.
Yeah, and Alayna, before you jump in, can I just preface you? The next question is asking specifically about the three-day, you know, the OA program, orientation venture, and then also the on-campus program. So maybe you can talk through what that looks like in a typical year, because that'll give us a baseline for what the contingency plans that would alter that would be.
Absolutely. So what orientation generally looks like is you move in on a Saturday, and there's a parent orientation as well that day, and that's kind of the transition day where you meet your OA trip group, your orientation and venture trip group. The parents have some different sessions and some different meals. The next day, which is a Sunday, we do some of our essential sessions that we think are just really important that you get before you leave campus for 4 days. And we also prepare for the OA trips logistically. And then you're off campus usually for 3.5 days on your orientation adventure trips, which, as I said, is all over Southern California. And everyone returns on a Thursday, and that evening is when we start academic orientation, where Sarah will give the big overview of the academic transition experience around registration, advising your first year seminar course, placement tests, all of that kind of stuff. You'll get the overview of after OA. And then we spend Friday, Saturday, Sunday on campus orientation, and that's where you're doing all of those things hands-on, meeting with every single student gets to meet with their advisor, every student gets to meet with their academic guide, and we have some different educational sessions around you know, healthy relationships and alcohol and other drug use and campus social norms, issues of diversity and inclusion. And so that's kind of what our orientation program looks like. We definitely infuse fun. Being at the 5 Cs, we always have different 5C events that all students are welcome to come to, as well as the RAs put on some events and social opportunities for students to get to know each other. So that's what a typical year in Pitzer's new student orientation program looks like. I actually just finished yesterday selecting all of our orientation leaders. We have 80 of them, OA trip leaders. We have 22 academic guides, and then a logistics staff. So they're all in the loop, and as current students, they understand the implications of the COVID-19 scenario and situation, and so they're kind of all ready for whatever the college chooses to do. With that being said, Pitzer's a small community, and all of them spoke of being very eager to get to know our new students, and if that needs to start happening over the summer through Zoom or through other mediums, they're all really eager to meet you all and kind of bring you into our Pitzer community and start to share our core values, share opportunities to make some of those connections. And so the OA program, as I've said already, is kind of, you know, a huge component of every student's transition experience. So my hope is that we can run that program in August, and if we don't, at some other point, once folks actually join the community physically. And so we will have to adapt and adjust accordingly. But I would say that our academic guides specifically around your academic transition are going to be pivotal. If you're, you know, in classes online or whatever it is, we're going to have a support system of students that can assist you all and kind of be that support system, at least initially. So we'll have to see. As Dan said, there's a lot of options out there, and we're going to have to wait and see where we're at as a country.
Yeah, thanks, Alayna. So that's sort of our baseline of where we would start from and then adapt from there. So, and as Alayna was talking about, there's some core sort of engagement opportunities, and there's a core purpose to each of the events that we do throughout the course of orientation. So the question about contingency plans, it would be based on, you know, just the reality of the situation and finding different ways or delayed or different timing ways to still implement and deliver those same events and services. It just may look different than we have done every year. So this is sort of uncharted territory, and we'll adapt as new information comes out and as more complete understanding is given as in terms of where we are as a country and what's safe and the right decision to make. So we'll figure out a way to implement it. If we are disrupted in some way, hopefully we're not, but if we are, we'll figure out a way to do that. There's a question here too, related, and we'll sort of change the subject a little bit. The question is, how can parents keep in touch with what's going on at the school? And that's a great question. There's a website on the Pitzer website that is trying to centralize all of the information around what's happening at Pitzer. As we learn, as changes are happening nationally, and we are adapting, we're trying to post any updates or changes that happen to the centralized Pitzer website. I believe there's a link directly to it from the homepage of the Pitzer homepage. So anything that the sort of the general and basic information will be uploaded there as we have it. And if there's more specific questions, you can call the Office of Student Affairs is maintaining a lot of that information as well. And folks aren't always on campus, so because we're practicing social distancing as well. So I highly recommend emailing folks, particularly the Dean of Students can help provide some information there. Anything folks want to add to that?
No.
Great. Let's go back to you, Sarah. What kind of classes do first years typically take during their first year, and what GEs do students take?
Okay. And I do want to point out I think the session right after this is specifically on academics. So some of these things may be better answered there. But in general, what I tell my first year advisees is that particularly their first year and some part into their second year is a time to explore. So Pitzer has a number of graduation requirements. We have breadth requirements where you're required to take 2 courses in the humanities and fine arts, 2 in social sciences, 1 in the natural sciences, and 1 in mathematics. Then we have some other very specific, very Pitzer specific requirements. You have to take a course in social justice theory, social responsibility praxis, intercultural understanding, both local and global. And so those are the courses I try to encourage students to find. And those can be anything. For example, there's a math professor who teaches a statistics course, introductory statistics course that also doubles as a social justice theory course. So these courses are spread all over the curriculum, and you'll find that if you seek out these courses, if you focus on completing those requirements, you'll also get exposed to a broad range of possible majors, and that will help you narrow down what you actually want to declare and where you want to kind of focus as you go along.
To that point, Sarah, can you talk a little bit about how students navigate, like if they're in a major that has pretty selective courses or there's a high demand, how do students navigate that as majors or non-majors in those demanding classes?
So it varies by major. So some majors are very flexible. Some majors, for example, particularly in the sciences, you have to take a certain number of courses in a certain order. You have to take if you're a biology major, you have to take general chemistry before you take organic chemistry, before you take biochemistry. So there are some courses that you need to start off with in the first year. There are also some courses that tend to be very popular, and it may take a semester or 2 before you can get into them, because the registration goes by class year. So seniors always register first, and then juniors and sophomores and freshmen start out at the bottom. One of the advantages of the 5-college system is that if some of our introductory courses fill up at Pitzer, you could take them somewhere else. So for example, I've had a lot of my advisees who are interested in economics take their first economics course at Scripps because that was where a seat was available their freshman year. And then as they got farther along, then they were able to get into Pitzer courses.
Sort of somewhat related question, Sarah, to you. Where can students get more information about the different options for the FYS courses that are coming up in this fall?
Okay, so that I think will go out, and I'm looking to Alayna to confirm that will go out to students around the same time that the roommate preference form and all that other information goes out. So you'll get a description of all 20 sections of the first year seminar, and then you'll be able to rank, I think, your top 5 choices. And then I'll spend the summer trying to get everybody into one of their preferred sections.
And you can actually look on, there is a first year seminar page, just as to see what last year was offered, just to kind of get an idea of the types of courses that faculty tend to teach, sorry.
Yeah, so if you're curious, yeah, you can see last year's courses, and course descriptions should be up on the Pitzer website.
Great, thanks. Yeah, there's a really awesome range of topics on those courses. So even as someone who's not taking one, I always read through them because they're fascinating. We have a really good question here too, kind of a change of topic here. How easy is it to have a therapist at Pitzer or to seek mental health resources and support? Which is a fantastic question. I'm glad people are thinking about that in advance. I'll give maybe a short answer and other folks can jump in. We have a 5C resource here called the Montessori Counseling Center, and I know many of our students utilize that service, and it's in pretty high demand. The Montessori Counseling Center is really designed for more short-term therapy. It's not necessarily designed for the ongoing management of other whatever challenges students are navigating and experiencing. So there's typically a limit of around 8 sessions for a student on an issue or a topic that they want to explore. So that's really designed, 8 sessions, if it's weekly, is about 2 months. So it's meant to be a shorter term. We often recommend for folks who are coming in and already utilize mental health services back home, that if you're wanting to transition that here, which is a great idea, we have folks here who can help you navigate that. We have someone in student affairs actually who maintains a list of local providers and the insurance that they take, so that can actually, as you're thinking about that and thinking about transitioning in, that's something to think about and get started on early. We also, I know a lot of our students will use who have already been seeing someone back home will continue to do sessions with that person over FaceTime or Skype or Zoom now probably, and maintain that all through their college career. I know many students who have done that. So is it easy? Yes. I think the longer term solution is to find something that's external to Pitzer's resources, but we can help facilitate those connections. What would folks like to add to that?
There are a lot of therapists in the village, and it's an easy walk. So I know a lot of our students go find someone local and they can just walk over whenever they have their appointments.
Great, thanks, Connie. That was a great question. Thanks for asking that, whoever that was. There's a question here I think that admissions will likely take on later, and the question is, how many students take time off before graduating, and how many students graduate in 4 years? The short answer to that is the vast majority graduate in 4 years, like north of 85%, I believe, or somewhere higher than that. So that's a really great question. I know our folks in admissions work closely with that information, and they can talk about that during the resource fair a little bit later. There's another question here that's somewhat related. What kind of help do you provide to students coming from public high schools adapting to college work? Both Sarah and Connie, I think, do you want to speak to that in terms of some of the academic support and how you navigate that with folks? Sarah, do you want to start us on
Yeah,
that?
I can start. So I'd say it's, I mean, for every student who comes in, it's an adjustment. I mean, whatever your high school experience was, it's going to be different here. In a lot of our introductory courses, the typical courses that students struggle with, math, chemistry, I think even psychology and econ, we do offer tutoring. So students, there's usually drop-in tutors that are juniors and seniors who've taken the course and succeeded, who can help support students. We've also got, I don't know, Connie, do you want to jump in?
Yeah. So first of all, we do have a lot of students who come from public schools, so you're not going to be feeling alone in that. I meet with students individually from the very first day of classes. I can help you come up with a plan for studying and balancing your work, your homework, and your social life. Trying to understand what the expectations are on campus and how to interact with your professors. So making sure that you're going to office hours and finding ways that you feel comfortable going to do that. I think sometimes students feel reluctant to go to office hours when they don't know a professor very well. And they're like, oh, I don't want to look dumb. And, you know, that's not what your professors are thinking. They want you to come in, and if you walk in the door, most of them are just going to start the conversation. Hi, how are you? Come on in, let's talk. And, you know, they want to help support you. And I think you're going to be able to find all of the resources you need. If you come into my office and it's not something I can help you with, I probably know someone who can help you with that. That's one of the advantages of a small campus, that we all know each other and we're all calling each other and sending introductory emails of, hi, Dan, someone came in and I think that maybe you can help them. And we're just really collaborative in that way.
We should make some t-shirts that say professors are people too.
Yes.
And I would just bump in and say that, again, I work with our student leaders, and again, that's going to be the information they're going to give you from your OA trip leaders to academic guides to RAs, is go to office hours. Like, the faculty are sitting there, they're available, they want to help, as well as knowing there's going to be a ton of peer support within our upperclassmen group that want to help answer questions for you and navigate resources and whatnot. So you will be well resourced here at Pitzer.
When we were conducting interviews for all those leaders, one of the questions is, what advice would you give, or what advice do you wish you had? And all of them, a huge majority of them said, go to professor's office hours. So there's a culture of that amongst our students too. It's not just like something's going wrong, I need help, let's go to the professor's office hours. There's a lot of proactive engagement around that too. So that's definitely part of the culture here at Pitzer. There's a couple different questions around how the advisor piece works for incoming students. So I'm wondering, maybe Alayna, you can talk a little bit about the logistics of how that, like the timing of when that happens, when orientation starts. And then Sarah, maybe if you can talk a little bit about what those conversations look like and how advisors work with first year students right when they get to campus. And Alayna, if there's anything going on specifically with advisors prior to coming to campus, if you could talk about that too.
So as I said, or as Sarah said as well, the advisor relationship starts with the first year seminar preference, your seminar preferences. And so when you're looking at your preferences, looking at who's teaching it, kind of what their, interests are, as well as just what the course is. And so when you arrive on campus, you're going to have an opportunity to meet with your first year seminar course as a whole group. And then your faculty will schedule a breakout to meet with you specifically during orientation. And then from there, you will register for classes. I think Sarah's probably going to be in a better spot to talk about the advisor relationship, but you will start the preference process around May 20th, and you'll find out at the end of July what first year seminar course you are in and who your advisor / professor is.
Yeah, so I can add a little bit. So you will meet your advisor for the first time during orientation, and you'll meet with them a couple of times. And one will be sort of a group session where you'll get to know your advisor a little bit, and maybe I usually pass out a survey so I can get to know students well. So I'll ask them things like, not just academic things like what majors they're interested in, but what's your favorite movie? Why did you choose Pitzer? So I can start to get to know you. And then most of that first year, it's helping you find ways to explore your interests and figure out how those could align with a major, and helping you start to think about how that might fit into your broader 4-year plan of study abroad and internships and minors as well. What I like to stress to students is, and this may be a little different than what you experienced in high school, is I really take the advisor part as we're here to give advice. We're not here to tell you what classes to take, but we're sort of here to help you navigate your academic experience. And so a lot of times when I meet with students, they want me to just tell them, should I take this course or that course, or should I, you know, what should I do because I got this grade in this course? And you know, I can give them advice, but ultimately this is about this is your college experience, so it's really the advisor's job just to help make sure you understand what all the options are, whether it's in terms of majors or study abroad or whatever, helping you find that information, and then you're really in the driver's seat of your college career.
And just to kind of piggyback on that is a piece of information that I have been given as well as shared is, you know, once you get on campus, if you want to start making relationships with other faculty and getting to know them, it's not a bad thing to have more than one advisor until you declare. And so if you want to explore a little bit and get to know different faculty, like you can do that, you know, after that first semester.
And to that point, there's a couple questions that are related to that. Sarah, if you could talk a little bit about how office hours work, like for either for yourself and or for, you know, generally the faculty. There's a question about that, and then also Connie, there's a question about how tutoring services work. I think both logistical but also content. So if we could cover those two. Sarah, do you mind getting us started with office hours?
Yeah, office hours. So every faculty member has some drop-in office hours where you can just show up and ask a question. You don't have to ask a question. You can just show up to say hello. I tend to tell my students, you know, I'm getting paid to sit there either way, so you might as well come by and chat with me. So those will be posted. They're usually on your professor's syllabus. They're usually posted on the Pitzer website. Most faculty will also be available by appointment if you can't make their office hours, if you have classes when those are scheduled. But that's sort of the first place to go when you have a question about a class or a possible major, is to drop into office hours.
So for tutoring, our coordinator for academic support is Rudolph Ganadin, and he puts together group tutoring sessions for all of our math classes, econ, statistics, and I think we may have one other group tutoring classification. But those hours are published, and most of the professors are going to let you know when those hours are happening. Some professors also have their own tutoring sessions. They may have a weekly review session, problem planning sessions, things like that. So your syllabus is really important. It's going to have a lot of that information on it. Do not shove that in your backpack and forget about it. It's got a lot of good stuff on there. But Academic Support Services does organize tutoring sessions multiple times per week.
Great, thanks. Transitioning to a different topic a little bit, there's a good question here about what resources are available for first-generation students. Anyone want to start us off on that one?
I guess I could start. We have a first-gen program that's run by one of our professors, Meeta Banerjee. And so if you are a first-generation college student, you should get contacted, I think, before orientation. And there are, I believe, maybe Alayna, you know this, that there may be their first social event is during orientation or the week right after. I can't remember off the top of my head. But there is, there's a Pitzer first generation group that's run by Professor Banerjee.
There's also a mentor program, and there's also a club. And so there's kind of different levels of support. And so I would say that you will be reached, they will reach out to you during the summer, and then move-in day, pretty much, the mentors will be out and about and around wanting to get to know folks and get to know parents and whatnot. So I'd say get involved if you're a first-gen student, get involved right away from the get-go.
And I work directly with the Student Senate, and part of their budget conversations of like how they're going to disperse their money to different clubs, one metric in that decision is how active and how engaged the students of a club are. And so the club element of the first generation programming is incredibly active, and they receive a lot of funding and support financially from Senate to put on and host all sorts of different events. So that's a really active community on our campus, which is great. And as Alayna said, there's multiple levels to that, some of which is just student driven. You know, the student leaders are taking that on and creating the community and the space that they want for themselves. So it's a great group, and they'll be really active literally from day one. There's a really good question here. I'm going to rephrase a little bit, but it's a couple people are asking about how they're maybe intimidated or nervous about the level of academic caliber of student that's coming in, and wondering if they, you know, fit that community. But there's a lot of students who are coming in with extracurriculars that have been really, really meaningful, right, to themselves, but also to their community. And there's folks asking if there's a culture or a space or a community around those sort of folks who are still at a high academic level, but really focusing a lot on what they're doing outside the classroom. Maybe Alayna, do you want to get us started with some of the things that you're involved with?
Yeah, for sure. So I've been at Pitzer since 2011. I previously worked at 2 other colleges, and what drew me to Pitzer as a staff member was the students, and that our students all have a reason for being at Pitzer. I love that the interview process is a huge aspect of the admissions process, and that each student has the opportunity to showcase kind of both their academic history, but also, you know, what they've been involved in. And so I would say the typical Pitzer student has a reason for being here. And if you were admitted, you would find community here. With that being said, we have a ton of students that are involved with our community engagement center with different community engagement opportunities in Southern California, and find real community there and real purpose there. We have a ton of students that are highly engaged in student governance and in our student clubs and organizations, both at Pitzer, but also at a 5C level. We have over 200 clubs at the 5 colleges that are made up of students from all of the colleges. And a lot of students, again, find community and find purpose and find their ability to give back and invest in the 5C clubs and in the Pitzer clubs. And then we have a lot of students that, you know, truly, like, they're very academically driven and are doing research, they're TAing, they're doing tutoring, they're doing internships, and really throw their time there. So I think you're going to find a variety of students and kind of what motivates them on a day-to-day basis and where they want to put their time. But I, again, would emphasize that our students are coming in kind of with all different, like, public school and private school and all that, those different kind of experiences. And there's a ton of resources here for all of those types of students that either want to continue to get, like, challenge themselves even more, or just need more support and want to utilize a lot of our academic support services. So I don't think you would be alone in your experience.
Yeah, I think just to add a little bit to what Alayna was saying, that I think that one of the reasons why, I know for myself and I know for other folks who have worked here for a while, part of the reason why we like working here is because the values that you see on our website and the mission statement are really lived out here, and students find they come from all over the place, literally in the world, but also in terms of their interests and passions, and they find some ways that are established through our community engagement center, like Alayna was talking about, and ways to get involved in our community and explore those passions. And then they create their own ways too. I'm working with a student right now I'm doing an independent study with her because she wanted to look at how we can do more outreach to high school students in the area to educate them about the college application process. And so she's working on that was a big passion point for her, and we're doing an independent study on that through organizational studies to look at how you create that level of engagement in the literally local community here around Pitzer. So both in the sort of structured ways that Pitzer has created mostly through the Community Engagement Center, and also the space for an opportunity for students to explore passions on their own in that way. That was a really good question.
And I just want to kind of follow up on one thing. There's not much that's closed to students at Pitzer as far as student orgs and student involvement. I did see a question about, do you have to apply? There's not many things that you'd have to apply for as far as like student organization involvement. So just expect when you get here that you can try a bunch of things out and attend different things and go to info sessions and then make a decision, once you feel ready. There's not going to be a pressure to do anything in advance of arriving to Pitzer.
Somewhat related, there was a question there about if there's a community service hour requirement, and there's not necessarily in the way that question is asking, right? Like, it's not an extracurricular sort of community service requirement in that way, but there are academic requirements somewhat related. Sarah, do you want to briefly talk about that? I think this is probably a good question for our resource fair or for one of the later sessions, but do you want to touch on the points there?
Yeah, and this is something that hopefully they'll talk about in the academics section, which is next. But one of the breadth requirements is what's called social responsibility praxis. And so that's a course that you have to take, a course that has a community service component as a central piece of the course. So you're spending, say, 40 hours over the semester volunteering, and at the same time, whatever the topic that you're doing community service in, it could be ESL tutoring, it could be doing outdoor education with elementary school students, then the academic part of your course is placing that in an academic context and thinking about how that works. So that's one of the required courses that you have to take.
Great, thanks, Sarah. We're going to go to our last question here, and it's a good one. I think anyone feel free to jump in as the mood strikes. But the question is generally about, this incoming class that's nationally, but our thinking about our incoming Pitzer students. This incoming class is going to be, they're in a tough spot, right? Like, where they didn't necessarily get to have the senior year experience that they were anticipating, and if things are delayed, or if we have to alter our plans, or the fall is disrupted in any way, that's going to continue. So I know we've been thinking about this a lot as a community of how do we make sure to support this group of students who has a unique experience as it goes for transitioning into college. So the question is generally about how do we support our students, knowing that background and knowing that backdrop and what's most salient on their minds. How do we help support and ease their transition into college?
That's a tough one.
It's a great question, and it's a
Yes.
the last one. I guess I can start a little bit, and folks can add. I think that's a really good and a fair question. I guess my first point would be to assure everyone who's listening that we understand that. We're still currently working with, just as you are all working through, what does this mean for your senior year of high school? We're working through the same thing right now with our seniors here at Pitzer, right? Like, we're really, really close with these students. I'm literally in daily contact with many of the student club leaders and Senate leaders, talking about how do we create an experience down the road for them to come back. Like, their 3.5 years at Pitzer were going great, and then all of a sudden this happened beyond anyone's control. So this is really salient on our minds, and that specific piece is really, really salient. And so these folks are going to be graduating and moving on. So at the same time, while we're thinking of how do we re-engage them in the community when we can, we're also, and specifically this group that's on this call right now, is thinking about how do we recognize that this is also happening for our incoming students, and that if things are delayed, that's just going to be continue to be exacerbated. So we're thinking about that. Alayna was talking a little bit about the pieces of orientation that are really sort of central to and really salient on our orientation experience. And so if for some reason we have to either put part of that online temporarily or move it somehow, we will do that. But we're going to approximate the orientation experience as much as we can. Like, even if it means delaying when we do the orientation adventure trips, that was part of our plan, right? Because we know what these sort of seminal, really key experiences and part of the Pitzer experience are, and we will do what we can to address those in the moment, but also replicate them later on when things are a little more safe and able to do that. What do other folks want to add to that?
Well, I would say from my perspective, I recognize, like, I have 2 kids at home, and this is a very stressful time for everybody. And so I definitely recognize this. And having spent time on Zoom with about 150 students in the last 2 weeks doing interviews, they recognize, like, they would say this as well. So I think our current Pitzer students understand the stress that you're all going through, and spoke a lot about how they would want to welcome you all in. What I love so much about Pitzer is that our students are so pivotal and central to helping our new students transition, you know, on campus, or, you know, if we have to think big. And they're eager to also give me input on ways that we could welcome you all if you can't be here immediately in the fall, as we hope. And so I would say that you should find confidence in knowing that there is, you know, a bunch of students that are excited to get to know you all, and are going to try to help me craft the best orientation experience we can, based on the circumstances we're working with. But I can assure you that the OA program is very pivotal, and I think any in-person experience is going to be really important. And so we will make sure that we do some sort of program like that, regardless of when you all arrive. And beyond orientation, like as Connie said, this is a well-connected campus. And if you need support and you need to reach out, there's going to be students that want to help, and there's a bunch of staff and faculty they're going to want to connect with you as well. So yeah, I would say reach out if you're feeling anything.
And I think just a final point on that before I think it looks like we'll probably transition in the next session here in a minute. Just a point on that is that, you know, you're seeing these folks on this call talking about that, and that's great. I think there's limited things we can say now before we have more answers as we go through the summer, and all that's true for everyone. But I would say that there is a commitment to Pitzer on all levels from folks who are here, and that includes faculty, staff, and students. I'm teaching a course right now called Leadership and Social Change, and the reading that we had done for this Thursday's class was about what happens to organizations and change structures when external factors come in and force change on an organization. So it was an interesting time to be talking about that. So obviously we talked about Pitzer and higher ed and the COVID situation, and the students had, and this is not unique to this discussion, but the students had a lot of really good ideas about how do we re-engage when we're all able to come back. What are the values of Pitzer? What is our core mission? What are the things that make us unique? Part of that is being here, being with these people, having the conversations that happen inside and outside of the classroom, and engaging on that level. And so the students had actually really great ideas on what we can do when we get back to reignite that culture and that passion and bring everybody back in. So yes, the folks who you see here on this call are thinking about this. It is literally at every level of the institution. There are students for sure, to the custodial staff who I was talking to a couple of days ago, we're thinking about that too, and how weird it is and to have nobody here, and it just, we just don't have the same level of passion or engagement when we don't have our passionate students here. So it's not just us, it's literally every single person that's a part of this community is thinking about how do we get back to where we were and as quickly as possible. So it'll be a community effort, and we're looking forward for you to be a part of that community, and we'll address that as we know more. So those were great questions. Thank you for that, and thanks to our panelists. I think I'll send it back to Duan, right, to transition us to the next.
Yeah, thanks Dan, thanks Sarah, thanks Alayna, thanks Connie. We are extending a virtual clap for that panel. We are going to transition now to the faculty panel. So I believe our faculty are on, and so if you guys want to switch spots, turn on your video, unmute yourself. Thank you guys so much.